Hi, welcome to this video. Today we will explain the three main types of machine learning models: approximation, classification, and forecasting. What is a model? A model describes a reward system or process using mathematical concepts. They are used to make decisions or predictions in many fields and sectors such as energy, medicine, marketing, etc. In this regard, machine learning is a part of artificial intelligence that deals with building models without being explicitly programmed. In the machine learning field, a model is sometimes called a hypothesis. A supervised learning algorithm analyzes the training data and produces an inferred functions which can map new examples. In supervised learning, each example is a pair consisting of an input object and the desired output value. An optimal scenario will allow the algorithm to determine the class level for an instance correctly. In this sense, generalizations refers to the ability of a model to adapt correctly to new, previously unseen belonging from the same domain as they used to create the model. The most important types of models in machine learning are approximation, classification, and forecasting. They allow us to discover relationships, recognize patterns, and predict trends from data. An approximation model assigns a set of input variables to one or several output variables. Here, the model learns from knowledge represented by a dataset consisting of instances with input and target variables. The targets are a specification of the response to the inputs. In this regard, the primary goal in an approximation problem is to model one or several target variables conditioned of the input variables. The following figure illustrates an approximation problem. The objective here is to estimate the value of y knowing the value of x. The following figure illustrates a dataset with 21 samples, one input variable x and one target variable y. It also shows the corresponding approximation model. Approximation model example: reducing the gas emission of a combined cycle power plant using machine learning. A combined cycle power plant that generates electricity wants to reduce its emissions of polluting gases such as nitrogen oxides, which are harmful to health. The combined cycle power plant consists of gas turbines, steam turbines, and steam generators with heat recovery. Gaseous combustion generates electricity by driving steam turbines. The power plant is sensorized and records all the data. From this, the company builds a model. The shape of this model is the following figure. The input variables are atmospheric variables and plant-related variables. From them, the model is created and the values of nitrogen oxides emissions produced by the plant are estimated. A classification model assigns a set of features to one of a prescribed number of classes. We talk about binary classification if the classes are true and false. An example is to diagnose a breast tumor as malignant true or benign false from digitized images. We talk about multiple classifications when we want to discern among many classes. In classification models, the target are binary variables. Typical examples are customer segmentation or medical diagnosis. Datasets for classification are very similar to that for approximation. The inputs here include features that characterize an object, and the targets specify the corresponding class. The fundamental goal in classification is to model the posterior probabilities of car memberships, conditions of the input variables. That means that the output of a classification model is the probability of an objective belonging to its class. The following image illustrates the case of a binary classification problem with two features. The central goal is to design a neural network with good generalization capabilities. That is a model which can classify new data correctly. The following is an example of a classification model in the healthcare sector. Early detection of lung carcinoma. Lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer death worldwide. This type of cancer does not show up in testing until later, after which treatments become ineffective or have lower success rates. For this reason, lung cancer must be diagnosed as early as possible. To allow for early detection of lung cancer, a hospital builds a model that provides a tool to support lung cancer risk assessment and risk management to facilitate prevention and screening discussion between individuals and their physicians. To build the model, a hospital creates a dataset containing lung cancer risk factors for 309 patients. The form of this model is in the following figure. The model estimates the probability that the patient will develop lung cancer from the clinical input variables. This will allow the hospital to closely follow new patients with a high probability of developing lung cancer. A forecasting model makes predictions based on available information about the past. The objective is to predict system future state from past observation. An example is to forecast the future sales of a car model as a function of part sales, marketing action, and macroeconomic variables. The following figure illustrates forecasting model. In forecasting applications, the data has a time series format. It consists of a sequence of variables observed and regular time intervals. A forecasting problem can also be solved by approximation and a function from input target data. Here, the inputs include past observation, predictors, and the targets include their corresponding future values, predictors. As always, good generalization is the central goal in forecasting applications. We will now illustrate how forecasting models work with an example. Countries' inflation. A country's government wants to predict next month's inflation. For this purpose, it uses a time series with macroeconomic variables. A government uses data for the previous 3 months to predict country's inflation for the next month. From this data, the following approximation model is created. The following figure shows the model form. Knowing the inflation and the consumer price index of the previous 3 months, the model is created and the next month's inflation is predicted. This forecasting will allow the government to take corresponding measures and inflation risks or falls. Conclusions. The main machine learning models are approximation, classification, and forecasting models. A model uses mathematical concepts to describe a real-world system or process. Good generalizability is the central objective when designing a model.